Emmerdale viewers think they've spotted a major clue for the aftermath of Charity Dingle's pregnancy after her episode with Kane Dingle aired. As fans of the ITV soap will know, poor Charity Dingle has got herself caught in a web of lies after promising to be Sarah Sugden's surrogate. Unfortunately, in the world of soap, nothing ever runs so smoothly. After a bleed left Charity thinking she'd lost Sarah's baby, she was surprised when the nurse confirmed through tests that she was pregnant. Sadly, Charity is carrying Ross Barron's baby instead after a drunken one-night stand. Charity became concerned when she spotted how much Kane was drinking and confronted him by telling Kane it's better to open up to his family instead of using alcohol to cope. In a fit of rage, Kane demanded for Charity to leave before throwing his whiskey bottle and smashing Zach Dingle's tankard. The pair ended up reflecting on their relationship, with Kane saying he's the best she's been with. Charity then laughed before admitting that it was actually Vanessa Woodfield. However, that didn't deter Kane, as he attempted to come on to her in a bid to distract himself from everything else. Charity, of course, played him at his own game and challenged him until he eventually gave in and opened up about how he was really struggling with Moira in prison. He shared that he panicked after a support group meeting after a man told him that his partner doesn't look at him the same since his diagnosis. Fearing his future with Moira, Kane bolted, but Charity reassured him that she'd be there for him, and he promised the same in return, offering her a St. Christopher's necklace to give back to him whenever she needed his help. Some viewers also noted how Kane mentioned Charity's selflessness, with her being a surrogate for granddaughter Sarah Sugden. Charity's face fell with guilt, and people now think that Kane will be there for Charity when the secret comes out. On X, formerly known as Twitter, @Emmerdale2Day penned, "Thinking about how Charity will probably give Kane back the Christopher medal when the baby secret comes out, if you ever need me." @Trish27843 added, "Yes, that was writers telling us that all will come out about the baby. Well, come on, Charity. Ross couldn't keep quiet if he tried, lol." As @Mrs. Bird 14656367 replied, "Most definitely she's getting one in first." Even the wind that swept through the rolling hills of Emmerdale carried something uneasy with it, like it knew a truth that hadn't yet been spoken aloud. Charity Dingle stood alone in the kitchen, her hands gripping the edge of the counter so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The house was quiet, but her mind wasn't. It hadn't been for days. Pregnant. The word echoed in her head like a taunt. It should have been a blessing. It was supposed to be Sarah's miracle. That had been the plan, the promise she made, the sacrifice she thought she could control. For once, Charity had tried to do something purely selfless. But nothing in her life had ever gone to plan. She closed her eyes, swallowing hard, because this baby wasn't Sarah's. A night she couldn't undo. It had only taken one night, one moment of weakness, one too many drinks, one reckless decision with Ross Barton that she'd convinced herself meant nothing. But now it meant everything. At first, when the bleeding started, she thought it was over. Part of her, if she would never admit it out loud, felt relief. The lie would die before it ever had to be spoken. But fate wasn't that kind. The nurse had smiled gently, explaining the results. "You're still pregnant." Those words had shattered her, because now there was no escape. Kane's breaking point. Meanwhile, Kane Dingle was falling apart in ways he refused to admit. The pub had become his refuge, the whiskey his shield. Each drink dulled the fear gnawing at him, the fear of losing Moira, of losing himself, of becoming someone he didn't recognize. When Charity found him that evening, she didn't hesitate. "You can't keep doing this, Kane," she said, her voice firm but laced with concern. "Drowning yourself isn't going to fix anything." Kane let out a bitter laugh, gripping his glass. "And what would you know about fixing things, Charity?" Her jaw tightened, but she held her ground. "More than you think." Something in her tone struck a nerve. Kane slammed the glass down. "Just go, before I say something I don't regret." But Charity didn't move. "Talk to me." That was the wrong thing to say. Rage flared in Kane's eyes as he grabbed the whiskey bottle and hurled it across the room. It smashed violently, shards scattering across the floor, along with Zack Dingle's tankard. The noise echoed like a gunshot. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Old flames, old truths. The silence that followed was different, heavier, more honest. Kane leaned back against the wall, breathing hard. "You don't get it," Charity shot back. Something shifted. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that, despite everything, Charity was always the one person who could see through him. Kane exhaled slowly. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. The words felt foreign in his mouth. Charity softened. Of what? Of losing her, of everything falling apart. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every movement. At that support group, this bloke said his partner doesn't look at him the same anymore, like he's already gone. Charity felt her chest tighten. "And you think that's gonna happen to you?" Kane didn't answer. He didn't need to. A moment too close. For a brief moment, something familiar flickered between them. The history, the chemistry, the chaos they'd always created together. Kane smirked faintly. "Still the best you ever had, though." Charity let out a laugh, shaking her head. "Not even close." "Oh, yeah? Vanessa, actually."
Kane raised an eyebrow, amused but undeterred. "That's so." He stepped closer, testing the space between them. For a second, Charity didn't move, didn't breathe, because part of her, some reckless, dangerous part, wanted to forget everything, just for a moment. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned in just enough to challenge him, her voice low. "Is that really what you're doing? Trying to distract yourself?" Kane hesitated, and just like that, the illusion broke. The truth beneath the surface. He stepped back, defeated. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. Finally, honesty. Charity's expression softened. "Then stop pretending you do." The words hit harder than any argument, because she wasn't just talking about him, she was talking about herself. The necklace. Later, as the tension eased, Kane reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a St. Christopher's necklace. He held it out to her. "What's this for?" Charity asked, confused. "If you ever need me," he said simply, "give it back." She stared at it for a moment before taking it, her fingers brushing his. A silent promise passed between them, one built on years of history, pain, and an unspoken understanding. The weight of guilt. But as Kane walked away, Charity felt something twist painfully in her chest, because she knew. When the truth came out, and it would come out, it would destroy everything, and Kane would be right in the middle of it. The village starts to notice. It didn't take long for whispers to start. Charity's behavior had changed, the way she avoided certain conversations, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. People noticed. They always did. Sarah, hopeful and excited, had no idea, and that made it worse, because every time Charity looked at her, the guilt grew heavier. Ross, the wild card. Then there was Ross, the one person who could bring it all crashing down. He wasn't known for keeping secrets. In fact, it was almost impressive how bad he was at it. And lately, he'd been acting strange, more watchful, more impatient, like he was waiting for something or someone. The theory. The viewers, if they had been watching this unfold, would have seen it too. The clues were all there. Kane's words, the necklace, the emphasis on Charity's selflessness. It wasn't just dialogue, it was foreshadowing. Because when the truth finally came out, Charity would need someone, and whether she deserved it or not, Kane would be there. The beginning of the end. That night, Charity stood in her bedroom, the necklace clutched tightly in her hand. She stared at her reflection, at the woman she barely recognized anymore. "How did it come to this?" she whispered. There was no answer, only silence and the quiet ticking of time running out. Because secrets like hers, they didn't stay buried, not in a place like this. And when it breaks, it won't just be her world that shatters. It will be everyone's. Sarah, Kane, Moira, Ross, all of them caught in the fallout of a truth that was never meant to exist. Charity closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. She had wanted to do something good, something right, but instead, she had created a storm. And soon, very soon,